My Fair Clavin is the 11th episode of the 6th season of Cheers. This is, of course, directed by the wonderful James Burrows, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It's a brilliant episode. There were a couple of attitudes that I don't love. There is one moment that is disgusting, funny, but disgusting. But in general, I thought this was pretty fabulous, and it's always nice to focus a little bit on Cliff. This happens more and more as the show progresses, and he's such a wonderful character. It actually starts off with the bar, and two twins, quite young-looking twins, come in, and Woody IDs one of them, and then asks the other one for ID. I feel like legally he does have to do that, but it's just funny because obviously the twins are identical. They're obviously born on the same date. The twins decide that the other one showing their ID is far too much hassle, which I do think was a bit of an overreaction, and they decide to leave. Carla stops them on the way out because, of course, she's having twins, and she asks them about extrasensory perception. And I actually found this to be very funny. Instead of answering her, it's just silent. And of course, the joke there is that they are communicating with each other in ways other than using speech. And I rather enjoyed it. It was a fun introduction. Then Cliff comes in and he has bought a condo. So he's no longer living with Norm. Norm is really angry about this because who's going to talk to Vera now if Cliff's not there? Norm is just going to have to do it. And that's the main narrative. Immediately after this announcement, the second part of the narrative is established. Rebecca comes in, annoyed at the world, and she's smoking again. And Sam takes that as an opportunity to flirt and try and tell her that she's smoking because there's this sexual tension between them. And we come back to that in a little bit. But first of all, we get to see Cliff's new condo. It looks like a really nice space, very well decorated. The decor is stunning. And Woody and Norm come over Woody's very casually dressed, a lot more so than what we're used to seeing. Cliff, of course, is very casually dressed. It would be a little bit strange, although I wouldn't be too surprised if he wore his postman's uniform at home. And Woody and Norm have come over for some housewarming, but they didn't call ahead, and Cliff tells them that he has, and I quote, somebody soft and sweet with a voice like a nightingale coming over. And it's somebody from the condo building, and I nearly said Norm and Cliff. Norm and Woody leave, and Sally arrives. She's played by Karen Akers. She was Employee of the Month at the Yarn Barn. Well, she tied Employee of the Month, and she actually wants to go out. And this is a bit of a mystery to begin with, because initially when Norm and Woody were there, Cliff said, I'd take her down to Cheers, but she just wants to stay at home. And then almost immediately we find out that actually it's the other way on. And she and Cliff settle down on the sofa to watch Jeopardy. At first it seems like they're about to have sex, very cleverly written. They're just watching Jeopardy. So why doesn't Cliff want to take her down to Cheers? We'll come back to that in a little bit. We're then back at Cheers. Rebecca comes in from a no-smoking clinic. Credit to her for making the right steps and trying to quit basically as soon as she started again. She seems to have, at times, the right attitude. Carla wants to go and torment her with a packet of cigarettes, but Frasier initially stops her. And then when Frasier tries to talk to Rebecca, she snaps at him. So Frasier just throws the cigarettes at her. And we have a couple of quotes here that I absolutely love. And the first one is actually from Carla. Frasier, first of all, says, may I suggest something that seems to have worked for many of my patients? This is what he says to Rebecca. But Carla replies, changing doctors, which I just found very, very funny. And the second quote that I love is actually from Frasier. It's not so much the words of the quote itself, but the meanings behind it and also what happens immediately after. Frasier says to Rebecca, if you smoke one more cigarette, you'll do the most disgusting, repulsive thing you can imagine. And it's basically telling Rebecca, how much do you really want to smoke? Would you be willing to do this horrific thing? And perfect timing, Sam walks into the room. And Rebecca walks up to him and tells him, if I smoke one more cigarette, I will sleep with you. And Sam drops the box that he's carrying. And of course, there are breakables in it. And we just hear this smashing sound. And it was just beautifully, beautifully executed. Cliff is actually in the bar at this point. and he asks Rebecca about his situation. And this is the bit where I didn't really love Cliff's attitude at this point. He explains to Rebecca that he is dating this woman, and this woman is ashamed about her looks, and she's afraid that she will embarrass Cliff. What on earth? As soon as Cliff said she's ashamed about her looks, immediately I realised Cliff was ashamed about the way she looked, which is nonsense. It's absolutely ridiculous. And immediately after that, he is willing to take Sally out to Cheers after she puts on a full face of makeup. It's not a good look for Cliff. It's not a good look for anybody. It really isn't. And it gets worse. It gets a little bit worse. There is a particular quote from Cliff that I'll share when we get there, but it isn't a great attitude to have. We're back at Cheers, and Sam is trying to get Carla to follow Rebecca into the toilets. Cliff and I should elaborate, because he wants to catch her smoking. Cliff and Sally then come in, and everybody agrees that she's clearly attractive, so there must be something wrong with her to be dating Cliff. And Cliff says to, well, everybody, is it so hard for you people, and whatever you are, Carla? Which sounds mean, but she had just been digging into him, so I thought that was quite funny. And it turns out that while Cliff was talking with the others, Sam had decided to sit down with Sally, not realising that she was dating Cliff, of course. And we have this brilliant moment. John Ratzenberger was just absolutely fabulous in this couple of seconds, as he always is, where he realises Sam is talking with Sally, realises what might end up happening, and he has two very full beers in his hand. And he basically runs across to Sally without spilling very much. It just dribbles. They could have made his life easier by not filling them all of the way to the top, but clearly that wasn't the case, and Ratzenberger just did this beautifully executed kind of run across to Sally, and it was very brief but fabulous. And he manages to tell Sam the situation, and unfortunately, while he's talking with Sam, Jeff from 325 in the condo apartment is talking with Sally. He's played by John Allen. Turns out he's got a new car. He wants to take Sally for a ride in the car. I didn't love Sally in this moment either, because she's on a date with Cliff, and she chose to, however temporarily, go off in another man's car. So she doesn't have a really great attitude at the moment either. Not as bad as Cliff's, definitely not as bad as Cliff's, but that's an unacceptable thing to do when you're on a date with somebody. So I didn't love her either. We do have a moment where Cliff, she goes off, and then Cliff is obviously unhappy. And honestly, watch this in slow motion. I watched it once normally and twice in slow motion because it's fantastic. Cliff punches what I thought was a bowl of nuts on the table, and it just sprays everywhere. And then I watched it in slow-mo, and I realised that they were pretzels, and it is perfect. It just kind of showers away from him, and it's just so beautifully executed. I absolutely loved it. Sam is continuing to try and catch Rebecca out. He bursts into her office, and no cigarettes. He closes the door, and we see what is the most disgusting thing ever. I'm a non-smoker, and when the door is closed, Rebecca opens her mouth to reveal a cigarette. It's beautifully done. She kind of just flips it around in her mouth and pops it out again, and it's very, very well executed, but absolutely revolting. Sam bursts back into the room. Rebecca needs to learn to lock the door, and he is so giddy with excitement that he caught her. He is so excited. It's beautiful. And to Rebecca's credit, she was going to stick with the pact that she made. She said, we'll do it at my place. And Sam realises, again, to Sam's credit, that he doesn't want to go through with it if Rebecca is not going to get into the spirit of it. And I like that. He's not taking advantage of her in this situation. I feel like Sam of the earlier seasons might have done. She was, after all, consenting. She might not have wanted to, but she was doing it. And Sam realised, actually, I don't want to. And we do have this brilliant moment where Sam comes out of the office afterwards and he talks with Carla, and he says, She asked me to go to bed with her, and I said no. And as soon as the words come out of his mouth, he realizes what he's done. And it's just absolutely fabulous. Ted Danson was amazing. Really wonderful performance. And then we have the final scene with Cliff. And this is a quote that I don't love. He's in the pool room. Sally comes back, and Cliff is obviously very unhappy. And he says, and I quote, "Try to do a girl a favour. Help her become a little bit more attractive." No, Cliff, that's not your job. Your job is to not improve the appearance of the person you've been dating for a matter of minutes, or anybody. And I don't love the attitude there, that he thought he was doing her a favour by making her change her appearance, put on a full face of makeup, when it was clearly something she wasn't used to and not comfortable with. However, it clearly backfired, because as she points out in that scene, she asks Cliff, "To make you happy, all I need to do is take off the makeup." And Cliff says, yes. And I absolutely loved her in this moment. She said no. She wasn't going to do it, because actually she liked the way it looked. It clearly gave her some confidence that she didn't know she had. And she put her foot down and said no, she wasn't going to do that just for Cliff. So definitely backfired on Cliff, which I feel like is a bit of a punishment for trying to change her. But she also said, that's what you're stuck with. So she wasn't just about to walk away from Cliff. And I like that. I like the fact that, yes, she'd changed her appearance. Clearly she was getting the attention of other guys where maybe she wasn't before. But she still stood by Cliff's side, and then spent the last couple of seconds of the episode insulting Cliff's appearance. But honestly, he got what he deserved. Absolutely got what he deserved. And Sam is trying to flirt with another smoker in the bar. It is a brilliant episode. I don't love Cliff's attitude in a lot of this, but at the end of the day, he did. He got what he deserved, and they're still together by the end of the episode, which I think is probably the best possible outcome. I think that they both had lessons to learn about each other, about themselves, about how to treat other people. I don't think Sally quite realised that she was wrong to go off in the car, but everything else seemed to fall into the right place at the end. And Rebecca is gorgeous. I have nothing else to say on the matter with Rebecca. Don't love her smoking. I hate smoking. But I did like how it played out in this episode. It's fabulous. My Fair Clavin is, needless to say, a really, really brilliant episode of Cheers.